Good evening. I am Pete, also known as Risk for Rewards, or over on Twitter, you can find me at Risk for Rewards. It has been some time. Obviously, I've not been on here for a fair while due to obviously us being so deep into the jump season. But we're back. So time is of the essence. So I will try and keep it as short as possible. But obviously, I do try like to go into as much detail as possible. If you are watching this at any time before or after Friday's racing, I have time stamped along the bottom, so you can just flick to whichever race you want to choose, or you can also flick to Saturday. I'll just go from Friday all the way through to the end of Saturday, just to make it as easy as possible. So we'll get straight to it. Just before I start, I did say I am going to try to have more guests on. Obviously, for this one in specifically, it's just a time sort of thing. So, but for Royal Ascot, I will look to have at least myself and another, maybe a couple of others, and we'll do like a preview for the week. Which obviously Royal Ascot's only what is it, a week Tuesday, I think it is. So that'll probably be out sometime next weekend, perhaps. Anyway, on to today. Epsom Derby weekend. It doesn't get much better than this. It is the one that most people look forward to, and it is a brilliant racing weekend. The undercard is could be better, but it is what it is. The big races are most important. So before we start, I'm just going to cover four big pointers. So the first one is ground. So ground is essential. We've been so fortunate with the first 6 weeks of the flat season. You're not seeing many comments on Twitter saying bring the jumps back. When does the jump season start? Get this flat rubbish off, because the ground has been a constant. It's basically been good ground, good to firm, good with a little bit of just a little bit of soft in it. Generally, which it just makes a fair playing field. Flat racing is brilliant when it's on good ground or quicker, and it's just so much easier to read the form book. Obviously, we look like we're going to get the big changes this weekend. I've literally just watched. So the time now is 7:30 on Thursday night. I've just watched the latest update from Betfred, and at 5 p.m. the clerk of the course gave an update, and he says it's good to soft in places. He said it's good generally, just with a little bit of soft in here and there, which at the moment that's fine. There is a little bit more rain forecast tonight, and that's after 5 mils today. There is a little bit of rain forecast overnight tonight. But hopefully it still rides on the good side tomorrow. You do have to take a pinch of salt. I think he's called Andrew Cooper. He does tend to not exaggerate, but he tends to say the ground's quicker than it normally is. So it'd be no surprise if the ground is actually softer than what it has been spoken of. But we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. The bigger worry would be Saturday. Saturday, there's potential to have really heavy rain Saturday morning, the early hours, and all the way through to the start of racing. So, but we'll just have to see how it takes. The reason I mention it is just have your patience. Like, unless you're someone who's chasing prices, then you can wait till the morning. You get best odds guaranteed, you get more information, you know what the ground's going to be. I mean, the best time to bet, 5 minutes before a race, but obviously you don't want to be backing a horse that's even money when it was 3-1 like 24 hours earlier, etc. So obviously everything's about timing, but for now I'd say just be patient, wait till the morning. You'll have all the information come 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Second big pointer is Epsom form. Epsom, bit like Newmarket, bit like Cheltenham. Obviously, they are undulating tracks. They are very quirky. Not all horses like them. It's better for a horse to have no Epsom form, in my opinion, than to have a horse that's ran on it 2 or 3 times and shown it's either doesn't handle it, or it's just the fact that their form is below when racing at other tracks. So it's just something of consideration. When you're clicking on the horse, just go back through and see if the horse has ran at Epsom. And another thing, obviously, some horses they might be 3-year-olds. So if you're looking at a horse and it's ran on its second start at Epsom as a 2-year-old, don't just write it off, because it might have been the fact that the horse was still raw, it was still green, it was still learning on the job, rather than the fact that it's actually it can't handle the track. Next pointer is trainers. So trainers, we're coming into the big weekend. So obviously, it's becoming very clear and quite well known. Aidan O'Brien is not really too interested in the Guineas, because he's got such big targets towards the end of the season with stuff like the Breeders' Cup, Champions Day, the Arc. He does not want to have his horses at 100% for the 2,000, 1,000 Guineas. That is clearly quite evident, and we've seen that. Obviously, I've got no doubt that probably the fastest horse in the 1,000 Guineas was obviously Lake Victoria. Well, not I say obviously, because obviously she didn't win the race, but in my opinion, if they met over 8 furlongs again, Desert Rose and Lake Victoria would absolutely go past her like washing, and I'd be shocked if she doesn't win the Coronation Stakes in 2 weeks' time. But it just shows, you look at it and you watch back, and that's a beautiful prep ready for obviously to take the Irish 1,000 Guineas. But however, now obviously Charlie Appleby is still a big trainer here, but all the rest are going to come into it. So for me, this meeting, and when I say this meeting, the big two races in particular, the Derby and the Oaks, they are John Gosden and Aidan O'Brien territory. They are the two big trainers for it. John Gosden normally, for the Oaks, normally has big contenders. He just doesn't have so much this year. And O'Brien, I'm not quite so convinced, but we shall see. He mopped up all the trials. And then sat just in behind, so my top 4 tier trainers for these big races, is Ralph Beckett and Charlie Appleby. They sit just in behind. I do like those two trainers for these sort of races. They obviously aren't smashing into the John Gosden and O'Brien stranglehold that they have on those two races, but they're getting very close and they're slowly beginning to edge into them. And my final pointer, so 4th big pointer that I will say, is do not just think about the Oaks and the Derby this weekend. So what I mean by that is there's going to be horses that do certain things in races where they appear they've either not stayed the race, they've stayed on really well, but they just weren't quick enough. So there's plenty of other big races coming up. So things like the Coral Eclipse, the Arc, the St. Leger, you've got to be thinking further down the line. So a prime one would be, most people watch the Chester trial and look, I'm sure it's Chester trial, watch Lambourne finish and thought, he looks like a St. Leger horse, rather than he looks like the Epsom Derby winner. So a horse like that obviously is prime for those sort of things. And as I've mentioned already with Lake Victoria, she clearly 1,000 Guineas, no show. She got pushed out to 6-1 for the Coronation Stakes at Royal Ascot. Obviously she wins there. Now she's 4-5 for the. So it's all about trying to think ahead. If I have any bets either before, obviously Saturday morning I will do an update which will be up on Twitter. And if there's horses that I'm going to back for things like the St. Leger or the Arc and stuff like that, and there will be, then I'll put them obviously up on Twitter, because the chance of me having a time to do 2 videos is very unlikely. So yeah, just 4 quick simple summary. First one, ground, have your patience. Second one is Epsom form. It's brilliant to have it. It's better to not have it than to have bad Epsom form. Third one is trainers. Focus on the big boys, John Gosden, Aidan O'Brien, and just in behind Rafe Beckett and Charlie Appleby. And then also plan for the future. And when I say plan for the future, I'm not saying stake like the Cheltenham and anti-post horses like that, because these horses chop and change all the time. As we've seen, like Charles Darwin and Kyprios, they were both looking like fairly good things for Royal Ascot. Then bang, they're both out, one retired and one injured. So it changes so fast. But you've got to be on it. You've got to be in it to win it. Anyway, right, so the time at the moment is 8 minutes. We're going to start Friday here. So Friday, first race. So this for me is what you call a trappy start to proceedings. Diego Ventura sets a standard, totally respectable. Looks like a slow burner, slowly coming on with racing. Obviously won last time out at Longchamp. The form of that race is nothing to write home about. Epsom Blue Sen hasn't exactly franked it since. The 4th behind Cosmic Year. Obviously Cosmic Year's gone on to finish 2nd in the Guineas, so that's probably stronger. 2-1, okay, it's probably fair. Halassan is very in and out. I'm not sure what to make of that last run. Some of the form last season behind Ruling Court, beating Al Qudra and stuff would give this horse a very strong chance. But for me, I haven't decided if I'm going to play in the race. I'm going to wait till the morning. But the two that I thought were more interesting, I say more interesting, I don't want to write them off, but the Wacko Kid had really strong form and has already beaten the favourite Diego Ventura, but in 2 runs has ran absolutely well. The first race ran okay, last race ran no race, now reaches for cheap pieces. And I don't know who got the call, but I'm guessing Tom Marquand has switched to Francisco's piece and Holly Doyle takes over. So if the Wacko Kid bounce back, huge chance, but I'm not sure. So the two that are interesting is Sakura Stands for Rafe Beckett, but you just don't know how ready the horse is. But I just think when I look through at some of these other horses, they've had their chance to prove it. And the form lines from last year, solid without being spectacular, but we all know how much his horses come on for a year. But the issue is they also come on leaps and bounds for a first run. The one that's perhaps even more interesting is Formal, because Formal looked at one stage like she could be an absolute world beater when beating Glistening on debut for Michael Stout, and everyone started to think, hang on a minute, what's this? This looks like an absolute machine, and could be like a 1,000 Guineas horse. Obviously blotted the copybook on final start, was sent off just 7-4 for a grade 2. Ran moderately when coming back, but you go back and watch that race, and Oisin Murphy is not hard whatsoever, and it looked like they were just doing a fact-finding mission. 7 furlongs. I think if the ground's soft, then she could become of interest. So those two are more of interest for me. At the moment, I've played nothing, and if I do, I'll wait until the morning and I'll put it up. Because at this stage, you're probably going to get the same price, but you get best odds guaranteed. And the other thing as well is a lot of bookmakers are restricting a lot of these prices, and then they let them out in the morning. They'll restrict the prices, then they'll put the best odds guaranteed as short as possible, and then like 10, 11 o'clock onwards, they'll start to drift back out and you get a more realistic price. So onto the Woodcote. This is a much more interesting race. The Charlie Appleby horse is obviously the one for money. Went from 4-1 to 9-4, and now sat in 6-4. I like the horse. I like the profile. Did beat his stablemate. Time to Turn. Time to Turn was the one sent off favourite on the day. William Buick chose that mount. Ducked right at the start. Maximised, got a clean. Looked very professional on debut. Won well. Big money purchase. And there's plenty to like about the horse. Appleby has had quite a few, well not quite a few, but he has had horses beat. He won it with Pinatubo, but he's had a few beaten in this race. But at the same time, it's just all about price. I think there's very little between the front few, and another thing is people will mention, will Maximise handle the ground? Maximise, I don't think will have any issue on the ground whatsoever. If I remember rightly, it's a Maymas. So I don't see any issue. If the rain has come and it goes to good soft or soft ground, then it'll be no issue. Drawn in 6, which I think is not a bad draw. Generally, the lower the better, but it all depends on if you can get out. So which comes on to my next. Havana Hurricane has been the talking horse later in the week. Was big, price as big as 9-1. Now you're looking at 3-1, 11-4, potentially 5-2. Very impressive on debut for Eve Johnson Houghton. She won this race with bobsleigh 2 years ago, and I'm sure she claimed the scalp of a big horse that day. My concern for Havana Hurricane is how quick the horse gets out from stall 1. If you get out fast from stall 1, then you're sat in the box seat and it's like being at Chester. You're exactly where you want to be and you're the one to beat. The problem was, on debut, this horse was not fast away. It wasn't like particularly slow, but was more towards the rear, came through strongly and won going away. Difference is, on that day, beat Logie Bear by 2 lengths. Logie Bear reopposes here, but Logie Bear has improved twice since that run. Ran to an RPR of 74, then 80, and now 86. So Logie Bear was impressive last time out, and is now on RPRs is £1 above Havana Hurricane. It's not to say he's going to reverse form, but he's now got 3 runs to Havana Hurricane's 1 run. So it could actually end up that Logie Bear could become the horse as an each way play. Again, not a race I've played in at the moment. There's a lot of love for Havana Hurricane from a lot of people, and the form lines in behind with Logie Bear, they have looked good so far, but at the same time, these are all 2-year-olds. It's not a race that you just go diving into. A lot of people see 6-4 Charlie Appleby. Let's go. Right, anyway, on to the big race of the day. So that's the Coronation Cup. I will go from the outside in. Continuous has just dropped off a cliff. Ever since he won the St. Ledger, ran well in the Arc, he has not been the same horse. They even tried using him as a pacemaker and he still couldn't do that greatly last time. Bellum Justin, I don't think he's up to this level. It would be disappointing if he could win. Ancient Wisdom will want soft ground. And again, disappointing was You Got To Me is such a strange purchase from Ammo Racing, so it'll be interesting to see how she gets on. First time out for Rafe Beckett. Hard to think that she's going to be ready to peak, but we shall see. But I just think when she's beaten by horses like Port Fairy and Content and 12 lengths behind Jean Bruegel, she's got work to do to obviously reverse form just with Jean Bruegel, let alone anything else. So for me, it'll be disappointing if it's not between the front 3. Giavolotto is incredibly interesting. Obviously, it just seems to always be one of those horses that's underrated. Like one over at Chartin by 2.5 lengths in grade 1 out there, was beaten by Kyprios. No shame in that whatsoever. And beat Vauban over the 14 furlongs in a grade 2. The only they've mentioned about soft ground being an issue, but I just can't see why it'd be an issue for him. I know he's campaigned a lot on faster ground, but I don't see. And you look on the numbers, he's rated 121, Calandigan's rated 124, which is probably about right, because when you look at their running in Maidan, Calandigan finished around 4 lengths ahead of him. So he's got 4 lengths to make up with that rival. They both haven't ran since Maidan, so it's fair game. It's just going to come down to on the day. Jean Brugel's interesting. He looked very good last season, but he looked like he was building up to be a stayer. Obviously, he was due to go to the Melbourne Cup. The issue that he had was, for whatever reason, the Australian steward said he couldn't run. He didn't get through quarantine or whatever it was, and he wasn't allowed to run. So he came back here. He was okay on return. And I know a lot of people say Aidan O'Brien's come on for their run, and they do come on for their run, but most of them came on for their run having already won. So it's a little bit different for him. And he was moderate behind Gallen, but it was always going to play out like that. Gallen came for a lot of late money. Joseph O'Brien's horse was race fit, a lot of late money just before the off. Went from the front and wasn't for catching, whereas Jean Brugel stayed on nicely in behind. You wouldn't put it this way: if this gets tactical, you wouldn't want to be leaving Jean Brugel out on the front on his own. But I do think when you look at some of these horses, like the likes of Calandigan and Giovallotto over this trip, it'll be disappointing if they can't probably go past the likes of Jean Brugel. Jean Brugel's interesting because, as I mentioned earlier about thinking outside the box, if Jean Brugel's to get beat here, but staying on into like a second or third, it'd be no surprise if he joins the Gold Cup team in 2 weeks' time and then roll the dice with him as well as Illinois. But we'll see. And then Calandigan. Wow. So Calandigan, you want to put it simply, if you're going on ratings, so 124, he's £3 clear. RPRs 127, which is miles clear. We're looking at £4 clear, and is form behind City of Troy and Matt. He's a Royal Ascot winner. All of this is just much stronger form at this over this trip or over 10 furlongs. He's got speed to burn. So what's the negative? The negative is that this is a quirky track. So, like, as in, he's got to prove that he'll handle this track because he is gelded. So there was reason for why he had to be gelded. He also, even though he's ran in such strong races, he's also been beaten on all three races, of which arguably I'd say 2 of them he could have perhaps won. So the race at Ascot last year, Champions Day, he was in the wrong place. Really poor ride. In fairness, and Matt probably did it well in the end anyway, because he came from a very similar position. But it's not to say either way, he found a way to get himself beat. Well, actually, to be fair, a lot of that was down to jockey. And then exactly the same last time out in Maidan. He was not given the best ride by Mikel Barcelona. I've watched this horse go from like 6-4 to even money to 4-5, well, 4-6, now out to 4-5. And the reason that I haven't backed him is simply Mikel Barcelona. Like, this race could get very tactical, and I've put on Twitter on the weekend, like, you watch some of Mikel Barcelona's rides, he's on top class horses like Zaragana, obviously in the French 1000 Guineas with what's her name, Sue. He was lucky to get that reversed. Yeah, you can make cases to say either way who should have taken it, but at the end of the day, he got the reversal. But he should have never been in that position. He could have won that race 2-3 lengths. Like, what's he doing? Like 6 wide. And he rode a 2-year-old on the weekend, and it was sent off favourite, having been very impressive on debut. Within the first 2 furlongs, it's out the back, and then he's trying to loop the whole field. Like, you don't win races like that. And that would be my biggest worry. And he was obviously in Maidan when he got this beat as well. I'm not saying it again like I don't want to stand here and jockey bash, but he does strike the fear into me. And if you were sat there, like, he could be even money tomorrow, and then suddenly you're like, do you know what? That's actually a fair price after decks. But you're going to be sitting there worrying. And if Jean Brugel's in front and you get a Sheen Murphy on Giovallotto coming out the outside, and they just sit there and they just keep him in a pocket, you've got no idea. And like, Mikel Barcelona could give this the perfect ride tomorrow, but that'd be like 1 in, say, 5 or 10 in the top level, and I find it very difficult to trust him. It's different if Calandigan was like 3-1 and you'd just be scraping over to get the price, because he is the best horse in the race without a doubt. And a lot of people are knocking the fact he's not won Group 1s. I just think he's had some very hefty targets, and as I've said, the last 2 rides have been very poor. So in summary, the Coronation Cup 2, I think Calandigan will win. But I haven't backed him because of the reasons I've just stated. On to a more interesting race, and that is the Nifty 50, the 315 at Epsom. So I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to pick out a couple that I think are of interest. So one I'm interested to see how they go is Akashita. So Akashita ran in the Emerald Mile Handicap, Premier Handicap over on 2000 Guineas Day. Was slow into stride, but also wasn't given the hardest time. Like, it was a horse that was held up, waiting for room, and is a proper galloper. Like, is one that needs a bit of space and time to really go for it. And that was on the day when Sakusa absolutely bolted up under Ryan Moore for Ed Dunlop. I looked through the last two rides, and I do think that they could have been ridden with a bigger picture ahead. Comes here off a mark of 89, run into RPRs of 93 already, so could have a little bit under the bonnet. This trainer's already brought horses across that have gone well at York before. Interesting jockey booking, Adam Farah. Draw is going to be difficult. You're not going to know where the best place to be drawn is until obviously they get racing and we see what the ground's like. But at the end of the day, drawn 6 and the market leaders are either side of them, 5 and 7. So I don't think that'll be an issue. Could be an each way play. I'm going to, again, a lot of these horses I'm flagging up because I'm looking to back them in the morning. But I thought this horse was very interesting, and I'm interested to see how it goes because Skakusa is around 10 to 1, 12 to 1 for Royal Ascot for one of the big handicaps, but has been put up, I think got put up £5 or maybe £8 for winning in Ireland, bolting up, which does make life a lot more difficult. But if this horse has been laid out, then got to go close. The only issue is with Akasheta is that, for me, that is a handicapper that is aiming to be well handicapped and bumps into this front three of horses that could be group level horses or at least listed level, and that's the problem. And all three of these I'm going to go through now look to have been laid out. So you look at, first up, you've got Botanical, George Bowie under Ryan Moore. George Bowie loves to lay one out for a handicap, and he likes to target York. So the issue is that obviously this will have been a plan. So you go back and you watch the two runs, and you watch when he is beaten by Dancing Gemini first time out at Doncaster, and you think he's given a hard enough ride without getting really stuck into him by Billy Loughnane in the finish. And then I thought very similar when stepped up to 10 behind Military Order. The issue is obviously he's still gone up. He'd gone up £1 for last year, but has managed to get himself back down to a mark of 108. If he bounces back to last year's form, especially as his two best runs at the end of the season were both on good to soft and heavy ground, if he runs to his 115 RPRs, 117 RPRs, he's going to be anywhere from £7 to £9 well in. And if you watch the way he's an uncomplicated horse, real strong traveller, and he finds a bit in the finish. And if he runs like that tomorrow, then he's going to go close regardless. So he's on the short list. The next one up is Mutawid or Muta'awid. So the issue is with Mutawid is that he had plenty of solid handicap form last season without blowing anything away, and then this season he had his prep run in May, and then he went to Newmarket, and I believe it was probably on 1000 Guineas Day. In fact, no, it wasn't 1000 Guineas Day. It was the 18th of May. But I'm not saying it was a brainless ride, but Jim Crowley left absolutely nothing uncovered. He literally just let this horse go, went from second, nudged in front, went clear, gone, and beats Bo Pedro, who's a 97 rated horse, easily by 6 lengths with very little effort. And at the time he was only getting £4, so it's no surprise to see the handicapper say, "Cheers, let's put him up £10." However, you look at the breeding, Handassa by Frankel. There's plenty of love in there, and if the soft ground comes, if the ground does begin to cut up, then there'll be no issue for this horse. My issue is the fact that it was put up £10. So if I was trying to knock one down, I'd probably go with that one just because it's been put up £10 for that last run. Which just brings me on to my other subject, which I'm going to apologies here. So at the moment, the French, the Prix d'Idean, you can find that on Odds Checker. The favourite is Zaragana. So Zaragana apparently is going to the Coronation Cup. So the second favourite is Falakea. I would love to back her because she looks a horse with such immense potential, but I think she was given such a brainless ride on debut by Jim Crowley, and the fact that he literally just let the horse go like Frankel style. It looked so impressive. It was the sexy visual poof, sort of look. But she's learned absolutely nothing. You can't come in and go, oh, what did you learn today? Well, I didn't learn anything. She just ran away with me and I let her, and she just blew the lids, and she was so impressive. But you really struggle to do that in the French Guineas. The reason I'm bringing that up is just if you want to have a look at that race and look further behind those two, if there's anything you fancy over there. Anyway, back to this race. So the market mover, and easy to see why. And I have backed this horse, currently around 7 to 2, 4 to 1. To be honest, it was 10 to 1 at the start of the week. I didn't expect the price to really move. A few people mentioned it, and the price began to move, and it went to like 6 to 1. I thought, well, it's still going to be 6 to 1 after Dex, but it's just continued to shorten. The problem a few weeks ago, we had the same with the Roger Varian for a horse in the London Gold Cup at Newbury. Woke up the next morning and I thought, oh, it was around 7 to 2. I thought it would be 9 to 2, 5 to 1 the next day. Next thing, it gets sent off 5 to 2 and it wins. So he's got a brilliant record at getting these horses bang on after a long period off the track. He's ran 3 horses in the last 10 years. All 3 have won. He is a good target trainer, and this is obviously a target race for him. And the reason why this is so specific is because this horse has already got Epsom form. Ran over this course and distance in April last year and finished behind Bellum Justin. So just for a little bit of context, I'll just go with that one race. This was off level weights. Chief Little Rock is now rated 108, who finished a neck behind Defiance, and in front was Bellum Justin, who is 112, who finished 3/4 of a length in front. So 112 and 108. Defiance is in here off 99. And to go one further back, beaten 2 3/4 lengths, was Arabic Legend, who's on 98. So it's hard to see. Defiance could easily have £5 or £10 up his sleeve. Obviously, he was finished 11.5 lengths behind Ambient Friendly, which wasn't obviously, but his form behind Ghost Writer, beating Caviar Heights. Yeah, he tailed off at the end of last season, which wasn't the greatest, but you just feel like he will be ready for tomorrow. Sylvester de Souza in the saddle, and this isn't the biggest field, and like I said, all the market leaders are around him. He's still going to have to be wise to it, but I've backed Defiance win only, and in the morning the chances are, so 7 to 2 or 4 to 1 you probably get, and then in the morning I'll have a look through Mutawid, Botanical, or Akashita, and see what the grounds happen and what the prices are at, to whether I have another win only bet or a small each way on Akashita. But Defiance is my main bet for that race, despite being 7 to 2, 4 to 1 now. So on to the big race, the race you're all here for, Epsom Oaks. So the Epsom Oaks, I'll try and keep this short because I know I do go on too much. Right, Go-Go Boots. Mentioned John Gosden. Obviously, normally in the past he has a strong contender. Not the strongest contender. Incredibly beautifully bred. I won't go into it, but very, very well bred. Asheen Murphy swaps into the saddle. 50 to 1 shot. Hard to see the horse featuring on what we've seen so far. Just didn't look anything special when beaten by Whirl. Whirl was hard fit that day. She wouldn't have been hard fit. Could improve here and run well at a big price, but hard to see her winning this. Oilin Queen or Quillin Queen behind Falakea, and then a short head victory over Revoir. I find it very hard to see how Revoir won't reverse the form with that horse. We might take the long way. This is a more exciting one at a bigger price, so as in when 16 to 1. This horse beat Mini Hawk, who's obviously Ryan Moore's riding here, around 5 to 1. Beat him 2.5 lengths back in October. Since this season has ran behind Delacroix, who's obviously second favourite or joint favourite for the Derby, and beat none other than Catalina Del Carpio. So Catalina Del Carpio looked so impressive on debut. She got beat here because we might take the long way, got first run on her, and Catalina Del Carpio will be very interesting at Royal Ascot in like 10 days time. So I think this horse could go well at a big price. My concern was the fact that Joseph was still mentioning races like the Pretty Polly and other things which are over like 10 furlongs, which doesn't make me think. Normally, if you've got an Oaks horse, you are going to the Oaks. It's not like, oh, we could go here, we've got entries there, we've got this. So, I mean, she's got a chance, but we'll see. Giselle, I think, could be the horse outside of Desert Flower. I think Giselle could be one of the horses with the most potential in the race. I just worry about her at this track. This is an issue this early in the season and in her career. Like, she was favourite for 1,000 Guineas and Oaks last year, but mentally she just doesn't look ready for this sort of test. She's growing in her frame. She's growing she just doesn't look like she knows enough about racing, even though she's had 4 starts. And yeah, she won easily last time, but it was a proper egg and spoon race. And I think Aidan would have been disappointed there wasn't like 8, 10 runners, so they could really like put her into something. It was 3 runners. She came around the bend, went away, and won easily. So she could be the one with the most potential and talent, but I'm just not sure about it. Elwatine, very interesting. Only having her 3rd run, 2nd run to finish 4th in the Guineas, 2 1/4 lengths behind Desert Flower. I mean, that's a massive run. Said bin Suror, obviously training for Hamdan Maktoum in those colours. Very, very interesting horse for this race. And like to only finish 2 1/4 lengths behind Desert Flower, considering this is like a new game to you. The issue would be is one that at one stage she was travelling better than Desert Flower, sat on her outside, but she didn't have the same. Desert Flower found plenty off the bridle and she didn't have enough to go with it. And the other negative, I know a lot of people say, oh yeah, but the Dabawi curse is gone. She is a Dabawi, and that's not my favourite. Just for context, Dabawis just don't have a fantastic record pedigree wise in the Derby and the Oaks. Last year, the Oaks was won. 1st and 2nd were both trained by pedigree Dabawi, but in the past it's not been likely. And in the Derby, Dabawis don't win the Derby. The closest I think has been Adyar, which was through sire. But our team, very interesting. Hard to say she won't because it's only her 3rd start, but the positives you have to question. Revoir. So as I said, King Rafe. When Johnny Gosden and Aidan O'Brien don't have one, often it could be King Rafe Beckett who does. And like I look through this list, wowzers. Aidan O'Brien 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Aidan O'Brien 6 of the last 10. John Gosden has won 3 of the last 10. Dermot Weld won it last year. So Rafe's trying to break into illustrious company, but we know that he's had horses that have gone close, and he's one who can always target these middle distance races. Revoir was so impressive on debut at Nottingham the end of last season, and then she looked like she would come on absolutely leaps and bounds for the combination of 2 furlongs and the run when finishing behind Quillen Queen and a horse that I like, Sand Gazelle. There's much to like about her. She's by study of man. She is one that I would expect to get to the trip and also to improve for the trip. Drawn well in 6. Hector Crouch takes the ride, and it wouldn't surprise me to see her go well. Mini Hawk, choice of Ryan Moore. I don't know. She was impressive enough at Chester, and she was workmanlike when she got the job beating Subsonic last season. But she doesn't strike me as like the next big horse, like as in the next like an Abel or Rhododendron, stuff like that. She's out of Frankel, so there's a strong chance she's going to get at least a 10. Well, obviously the Chester trial is actually 11.5, so she's pretty much guaranteed to get this trip. But I don't know, like as in I wasn't sure. I thought I don't know who Ryan Moore was going to pick, because obviously I thought Giselle might have been talented enough, but she was going to not. This wouldn't have been her race. Whirl, obviously we'll move on to Whirl. Whirl was really impressive. Whirl reminds me a bit more like Minding and Love, where she's really took a battering in the 2-year-old season. She's raced plenty, but she improved from her 1st start to 2nd start. But one thing that was, she won the decent Oaks trial at York, beating a lot of the well fancied British hopes. But in doing so, they said one that she was likely a 10 furlong horse. Michael Tabor then said she probably won't go to the Oaks, and also it was the fact that it's just she's not really the horse that they had focused for this race. And then Aidan O'Brien followed that up with she was hard fit on the day. So yeah, that was an issue. So again, she's got a strong chance, but is this what she wants? So let's just simplify this. Desert Flower, all the best form. She's miles clear of all of these. Like every horse in here has got to improve a minimum of 7 to 10 pounds to get to her level. But obviously it is a step up in trip. The concern will be the fact that she hasn't got the pedigree for the trip. She doesn't run the cadence. So a lot of people use stride analysis and cadence. But she settled well. She was strongest at the line. My concern personally, my one concern is the fact that Charlie Appleby is so good at getting a horse right for the day. So she could have been 100% for that day. And then going on to the going on to this race, can you have her at 100% again? Because I remember a few years back in Maydown, he was getting a lot of his horses perfect first time out, then they weren't able to match it second time out. But I just think you basically, you either play her or you have the field running for you, and you're basically laying her or choosing against. So in summary, right, I backed Giselle at 16-1, and Desert Flower I backed at 5-1. I've now laid the field basically so that if Desert Flower was basically, if Desert Flower wins, I make money. If anything else wins, I don't lose money, just because of the way that I've laid my book around it. So even if Giselle wins, I still only break even. The only way I make money is if Desert Flower wins now. So for me, it was either a for or against, and I'll be with her. But if you're asking me for one at a bigger price, I would definitely go with it would be Revoir each way. I've really got the thing for the Rafe Beckett horses this weekend. I just think they're going to be prepped ready to go. And in a year where I'm not sure, when Ryan Moore still doesn't know who's going to ride so close to the race, like I'm not convinced that he's actually got one. So we'll have to see. So in summary, Desert Flower for me. Absolutely nothing in the 4:35, and then in the final race I've got Ross Collin. So Ross Collin is the perennial winner of this. The reason he stood out for me was because I was there in 2021 when he won the last race of the day. I didn't back him on that day, but I do remember him winning, and it stuck out. He was on. James Doyle was aboard, and he absolutely bolted up. And I was like, "Oh, how did I not see that?" I think I might have even already been halfway back to Epsom, out of Epsom. I think we'd already gone to. We were in the bookies by then, just watching it on the way into town to go for a few beers. But yeah, long story short, Ross Collin won it. However, Ross Collin then came back again last year, and had a couple of prep runs where you looked and thought, well, his form's not really there, and including one which was just 7 days before at Chester, which was, and then he won this off a mark of 97. And what's he done? He's had a prep run at Chester 7 days ago. And what mark's he on? A mark of 97. So he's coming here. He's in very similar form. Hopefully he's got a big run on him. My only concern is the fact that James Doyle's got a few rides on this card, but he's not booked for the ride on Ross Cohen. It's actually Jason Watson, which doesn't really make much sense to me. Like if James Doyle took it, because James Doyle was the one who's won on him twice in this race. But it is what it is. He's on the right mark, right horse, and he's the one for me for the Friday. So I'm just going to quickly run back through on a quick summary of Friday. I'm actually going to split the videos because I've realised I've talked too much already. So on the Friday, so 1:30, Formal and Sakura Sands are the two that interest me, but I will wait for morning prices. The front three in the Woodcote all interest me, but again, it's all about price. I'll wait till the morning. I may not even play any of them. 240, more than likely Calandagan wins, but there's no chance that I'll be backing him. 315 Epsom, I'm looking at 4-1's the best price at the moment for Defiance, and I'll look to either have another win only or each way bet, and I have backed Defiance already. I'm on Desert Flower anti-post for the Oaks at 5-1, 7-2. If I didn't have a bet, then I'd back her at the morning prices because I think she could end up drifting. If you want one at a bigger price each way, or just a bigger price, I'd be going Revoir. And then finally in the 5-10, I've gone win only on Ross Cohen. I put that up at 4-1 earlier on. So I'm going to split the video. So that is Friday done. Good luck for whoever you're punting.